So, want to do a video for an overview of the upgrade on this machine. Now that it's complete, what are some of the things that I learned along the way that you guys could put to use? Well, you've seen the video where we modified the chassis for the large coupling nuts to fit, and for the big steppers, and modifying the stainless steel spacers. The back side over here is the same way. Can't hardly see that. And the Z-axis is the same way. Now, I found an interesting problem while I was working on this that I never saw anybody describe, and now I want to make a video to show you the issue that I have here. Eventually I'm going to do a back plate, and I'm going to do some supported rails this way and supported rails on the Z-axis, and probably a different ball screw. But for right now I need to get the machine going. But there was a problem. So let me show you the original couplers. So this is listed as the Y, but I actually made this my X. So this coupler went this way on the machine, so it's the larger coupler. This coupler was the X, what I called the Y, and you can see how it's kind of springy, and so the whole thought of putting the bigger couplers was for more rigidity against twisting, and they're great for that. But the one fault they have is compression. Now, if you have a standard ball screw on these machines, you have a locking nut right here, and you have a locking nut right here. So what this does, this locks the ball screw in the machine so it has no end play. The problem is they do not do that with the Z-axis, and I think it's for assembly, so you can get in here and assemble the nut. Now, you're not going to be able to see this, I'm going to try my best, but if you have one of these machines, look under the bottom where the ball screw comes through. If there's a brass bushing here and it's totally flush, then you have the machine like I have. And the problem you'll have here is there's simply just a bushing in here, right where I'm pointing this screwdriver. And then at the top, there's no other bushing. So there's nothing to keep the Z carriage from moving up and down. So how did they sell this machine that way to begin with? So if you get looking at the Z nut, it splits so that it'll clamp down, but it's solid. So they use a solid nut for the Z, and I'm actually going to have to put this nut back in place so that I can use the machine. And later on, when I upgrade the machine, I can take the real nice coupling that I have and put it back into service. Anyhow, I wanted to show you guys that you'll probably need to reuse your Z nut when you do this upgrade, which means that these spacers probably won't be needed anymore. The stepper motor will probably mount directly to the chassis, and this nut will sit in there. A second problem that I found is when you run this large coupler nut, this Z coupler is made to kind of go down inside this housing when this comes all the way to the top. As it stands right now, you see the distance we have here is approximately 20 millimeters. This is the coupling nut bottomed against this chassis. So I lose 20 millimeters of positive Z travel. And it's not a big deal, I mean, but it just limits the height of parts that I can work on. So what I've done is I've ran this all the way up. You can see I go down with it and then up, and that's bottomed out. And I doubt you can see that because I don't have a flashlight, but that coupler nut is bottomed right against that chassis. So I want to bottom it for a reason. I've got a dial indicator here, and I don't want the indicator to be reading any backlash in the ball screw. So we've bottomed the nut out in the chassis. So now any movement that we have up and down is actually from the coupler nut. Now there's nothing wrong with the coupler. That's the way it's designed. It's the machine that's at fault. So I'm going to put this in the tripod so that I can work this indicator. Okay, we'll zoom in. It's probably going to be blurry. Let me back out a little bit. So I'll go ahead and tell you that we're going to be expecting about 50 thousandths of travel. So it's a 100 thousandths dial. So if the needle ends up over here, that's 50 thou. So I'm just going to take one hand and pull up on it. So there's 30 and 40 right there. Just real easy moving up and down with just my thumb. Now if I want to measure the total compression of the nut, and grab both hands here and squeeze tight, and that's about 80 thou of movement that this nut has in it. So I'm going to have to replace it with a solid coupler. This coupler is actually going to act as the shimmer to control the end plate. So the shaft in the motor and then the bushing down at the bottom coupled with this nut, that should take most of that out of there. Anyway, I just wanted to make you aware of that. If you do upgrade your machine and you do change stepper motors, you need to stay with the stock coupling nut. Well, that's all I have for that part of it. I'm going to swap the coupling nut out and we'll be able to put our machine in service. Here's a shot that shows you how the coupling nut is actually going to have to go down through the, I guess that's the ball screw mount. If we can enlarge that hole to fit the coupler, the new couplers, then you would regain your clearance back that you lost. But we still wouldn't solve our end plate problem. So with this all the way up, you can see that we've regained our clearance back. So that's pretty important. So let's put the solid nut back in and put it all together. And then we're going to check our end play and see. I'm not expecting 0, but hopefully we're going to have less than 80 thou. Okay, so we got the solid nut in here. This is rigidly mounted and the backlash is gone, but I'm going to show you, you're going to see something on the needle, but I'm going to show you where that's coming from. So we bring this down to roughly 0 and I'm pulling pretty hard on that. So you got 5 thou. Let me show you where that's coming from. See that move? That's these unsupported rails twisting. They're twisting inside here. That's why you need to do the supported rails on the back plate to get rid of that. So I've got rid of the end play. This I can do nothing about until I upgrade the machine. So we should be good to cut.